Good morning. I'm Liz Recchi, Government Affairs Director here at WeMAR. Thank you for coming to Coffee with the County Board of Supervisors. We're so happy to have our two supervisors for our area coming and visiting with us today. Supervisor Gallardo is running just a few minutes late. However, we're going to go ahead and start. And we'll start with Supervisor Hickman. So Supervisor Hickman represents District 5, right? 4. And Supervisor Gallardo is 5. So right. Hickman 4, Gallardo 5. I had it right on the piece of paper. And on the map in my office, it's all right. So go check the map in my office and you'll see exactly where it is. So Supervisor Hickman is here right now. We'll bring up Supervisor Gallardo as soon as he comes. Most of you know Supervisor Hickman. He's been here at WeMAR several times and very accessible. I know our members love to speak with him and hear from him and his office. I've gotten many members who have said they've called his office and had wonderful conversations with his staff as well as himself. So please welcome Supervisor Hickman.
So I was told stage left because I'm the Republican and I'm on the hard right. And when Supervisor Gallardo gets here, he gets to be left. But
okay, there you go.
Enough with the political jokes. So, sorry. Good morning, everybody.
So we're going to start out with a great overview question. First of all, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, how you came to be a supervisor at the county, what your favorite part of the job is, what your least favorite part of the job is. And then tell us what actually the job is. What is the job?
This job is phenomenal. Well, let's see. Okay, so I'll reintroduce myself to the group again, and I really enjoy coming out and talking to this group. You guys have your feet on the ground when it comes to business, especially in the West Valley. I think I've warned you guys ever since I was appointed and then elected. You know, growth is coming. I think you guys are feeling that. Thank God for realtors, right? Because you guys are selling, hopefully, a lot of houses or purchasing a lot of houses. I hope you're all making a lot of money. And I hope you all go to District 4 and spend it there. All right? So my name's Clint Hickman. Just real briefly, I went through from start to finish the Peoria school system. I went from starting in first grade at Central School all the way through and graduated Peoria High School. Took some time at Glendale Community College and then went to University of Arizona and graduated with a marketing degree. I graduated with a marketing degree. I was a farmer kid. I went into the egg barns probably, well, very early, but I actually started on our family farm's payroll at the age of 9. Learned how to drive my first dump truck at age 11. Worked around equipment and augers and everything else. I think I am the fourth son, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the princess was born, my sister, right? So the only way I was going to get out of those barns was to get an education, and I had my fill of agriculture at that time. So U of A is a big agriculture school, so I went into the business college, graduated with a marketing degree, because the guy that had the cleanest job was our salesman because he could get off the farm and go sell eggs. And I thought that would be a good way to go in life. So I graduated. My brothers that were and still are president and vice president put me right back into the barns to make sure I knew everything about it. Then I worked through the processing plant, took over the drivers, took over the loading team, took over the processing plant, and then pretty soon I then was able to get into sales and marketing for our company. While I was doing that, as I was continuing to grow and learning about our customers and building relationships in the not just Arizona but in the western states, I felt like I was spending as much time at the state legislature heading off poor legislation than I was out there selling eggs. I think you guys get involved in that. Every time the legislature seems to start, there's this many good bills and this many bad bills you got to fight against, right? So it seemed like I was spending so much of my time there that I kept my ears open. I was a child of unincorporated area. Unincorporated areas, as you guys know, is the area that has not been swallowed up by a municipality or annexed in. Still to this day, District 4 has the largest acreage in unincorporated area. I think it's around 650,000 acres of unincorporated area. So that means the county is that government. I've made jokes. I've got two of the largest communities, unincorporated communities, probably in the United States, in Sun City and Sun City West. So basically, and they're in my district. So basically, once again, the common joke, especially when I go to Sun City, is, "Hey, I'm your mayor." Awesome. And my wife, who was in her 30s, still gets a kick out of being first lady of a community or communities that she can't live in. So it's great. And I don't think Sun City and Sun City wants me anyway, just yet. Glad you're at. Thank you, Jim. So anyway, that got me into politics. The appointment opened up. Max Wilson retired. I think Max, some of you might be familiar with when he was on the board, and I was appointed due to his health reasons. He resigned. Then I've since been elected a couple times. Supervisors get elected once every 4 years. All county officers are usually run on the election cycle that the presidential election cycle runs in. We are all in 4-year terms. So Steve and I did not have to run in this election, and I got to tell you, I've appreciated the break. I've appreciated watching what's been going on. I'm kind of glad I'm not running in this election, but who knows what will happen in 2 years. So good things about the job, the assets of the West Valley. First of all, the people I've grown up with. My district runs from 43rd Avenue to the county line to Yavapai County and bends around and goes all the way through Wickenburg, Gila, county lines all the way to around Buckeye. So large swath of land, lots of ground to cover. It's a full-time job. We are in session year-round. Of course, we're taking holiday breaks too, but unlike the legislature, who goes in session and then ends session 4 months later or so, we're year-round. I appreciate that. Because we're year-round, it almost seems like, you know, they say, is it a part-time job? And yeah, kind of. It's kind of a part-time job. Sometimes it's 40 hours a week, but farmers are used to working 80. So yeah, it's a part-time job. But it gives you a good glimpse. This job gives you a great glimpse on how government works. And I really appreciate being in this county government. I think it's, sorry, but selfishly, I think it's the best form of government. There's 5 of us, and we represent districts as we ring the valley. In my district and in each of the districts, that represents about 670,000 voters. Maricopa County is the largest growing county. I'm sure you guys are feeling that. The largest growing county in the United States. Just giving you this whole spiel. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going into history and setting up the scene so Gallardo doesn't have to stumble through it when he gets here. You know, so I can pick on him mercilessly, but I'm going to my whole attitude is going to change when he walks in the door. I'm going to be very nice to him. So he's a great guy, and hopefully we can go into that. Oh God, there he is. Yeah. And he heard the nice part too. So anyway, 640,000 because there's over 3 million people in this county. The county is the 4th largest in population in the United. Let's see, 6th largest in population in the United States, 4th largest in geographical area. So Maricopa County is larger, I believe, than 13 different states. People that I know in the East Coast say, "Oh my God, this county! How do you do that?" Our counties, we're used to having 50 counties in a state. Arizona has 15, and again, 3/4 of the population of Arizona is in Maricopa County. So it's a lot of time, a lot of distance to cover, a lot of people to work through issues. As you guys know, county touches almost everything from A to Z. A big part, you know, county jails, county attorney's office, the court system, restaurant inspections, pest control, public health. The list goes on and on. And luckily, what I also heard about this job, and Steve will probably tell you, the great thing about this job, I was promised no homework, but then I saw these questions, and I think there's about 150 to prepare. So the hard ones will be answered today by Steve Gallardo. The easy ones are all me. So anyway, so that's a little bit about that. Sorry. Hi, Steve.
Hey,
So we were just
I blame Clint for being late. So.
we were just asking to give us a little information about yourself and how you came to be a county board of supervisor and your favorite part and least favorite part of the job.
Oh, okay, great. First of all, my apologies for being late. I had a 7:30 coffee that didn't start till like 7:50. So, anyways, I apologize for being late. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Arizona. I was born and raised out in Maryvale. Grew up in the playgrounds of Maryvale. It is home. My parents are retired now. They still live in the same home they bought back in realtors probably don't want to hear that, but they still bought this. They live in the same home, man, back in 68, 67 or something like that. They originated out of Tolleson, and when John F. Long had this master plan development out there, they moved out in there, and it's home. So we all grew up in the same home. I got my start in politics. I first started off on a local school board. I was a school board member on a school district which I'm a product of. I grew up in Cartwright Elementary School District. I served as a school board, went from the school board, and I went to a place called the state capitol. And for those that have been to that state capitol, you know how crazy it sometimes can be. But I was there for 12 years, both in the House and the Senate. Worked real well with the association as well on various types of policy issues. And in 2014, the seat on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors became vacant, and I decided that I was going to make a run for it. Didn't know exactly what to expect, but I love it. I mean, it's in my opinion, it's the best job you can ever have. The communities in which I serve are the southwest portion of Maricopa County, covers everything from the town of Guadalupe to Levine, central Phoenix. I go all the way to west Phoenix, Avondale. We split Goodyear and Buckeye. I go all the way down to my little diamond in the rough Gila Bend. So it's a great community, very diverse community, working family community. A lot of young families, I come to find out. A lot of areas to grow, and was particularly out here in the West Valley and out there in the Levine. A lot of areas to grow. But I love the job. I've been there for, 6 years now? I hate to admit it, but I enjoy working with Mr. Hickman here. But no, it's a great job. It really is. Good people at the county. Financially, the county is structured well. We are not seeing the problems that other subdivision or political subdivisions are having to deal with. But I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. The least thing I like, I think one of the least things I like, it's so huge. It's so huge. Maricopa County is so big, as we know. You know, you find yourself driving, on one side of the town. I can be in the South Phoenix area, and then I'm driving all the way to Gila Bend and Buckeye. But other than that, it's just a great gig, and I enjoy it. And thank you for the invite.
Great.
And I was going to say, I didn't say the one thing I don't like, and I think most of us will probably have this high on the list. Traffic.
Traffic.
Yeah.
The traffic is horrendous, it seems. I mean, then I go to LA and go, I guess Phoenix isn't so bad.
Yeah.
So sometimes I go over there just to get that perspective. But yeah, the I-10, that's a part of the job that I didn't have when I was egg farmer. I was out in the rural areas or could time my schedule to try to avoid traffic. But our meetings start at 8:39, so I'm right in the middle of the traffic thing going down I-10 now, the parking lot that is I-10. And it's unfortunate. Hopefully we can continue to work on that.
Hopefully with that 202, it'll help.
Hopefully, yeah.
And
Bend
then
around.
maybe the Highway 30 and things like that will help take some of that
True.
pressure off.
Yep.
We all hope. So as long as I've got you both here, how about if you tell us, what is the job of a county supervisor? What do you guys do?
So don't tell our secrets.
I'm sorry.
We try to do as little as possible and look as good as we can. How about you,
You're doing a
Steve?
fine job.
I think when I first got elected, I wasn't too sure. I mean, I understood the responsibility and the role of county supervisor. I kind of had an idea. I had an idea in terms of the issues that we'd be addressing, kind of got a feel for it. But what I come to find out is a lot of folks have no idea what a county supervisor does. When I was in the campaign trail, my first time on the county supervisor, I'm going out talking to groups and talking to folks at their door, and they all had the same questions like, who's there now, and who are you running against, and what exactly do you do? And so that was one of the things that really raised an eyebrow, that a lot of folks in our communities, if they have an issue, they'll go to your city council and your mayor before they come to us, even though it's a county issue. It's a county responsibility. So one of the things that we did in our office, and I told our little staff, I said, hey, one of the things I want to do is get out there. I want to get in the community. People need to know where to go for services, who to call. If there's an issue, let it be flood control, let it be animal care and control, let it be public health, whatever the issue is, they need to know where to call and where to go. And so we made a conscious effort just to go out to every little community event, let it be a small street fair, let it be a little school community organization type event. We wanted to be out there to really start promoting what Maricopa County does and the different services. There's like, 40 or so, I could be wrong, 40 or so different departments that are under Maricopa County. It's a pretty large, folks don't realize how big, what's our budget,
2.4
billion. So I don't think folks really have an understanding exactly the massive responsibilities that the Board of Supervisors have. You know, they know about their city council, they know about their mayors, they may know about their legislature, and even their school board. But in terms of the county, and I think that's something that we need to continue to educate the public in terms of what we do. We oversee the finances of the state, of the county coffers. Let it be, as Clint indicated, let it be the criminal justice system, let it be the animal care control, let it be public health, let it be health and human services, whatever. But there's a variety of programs and services that I mean, even as myself being there 6 years, I got to look at a little cheat sheet sometimes to say, oh yeah, that's that's something under our belt. But it's massive in terms of our responsibility.
And if Steve doesn't mind, a little bit further, joke or mess around, but our central focus is, as 5 supervisors, we're basically the budgetary authority over all the county departments. So we set our budget, and we don't just work on a budget for a couple months. It goes, if the economy's changing or swinging, we're always taking a look at our revenues coming in versus our expenditures going out, and try to keep right-sizing this government. So it's an expenditure authority. It's also taking a look at policies set by other electeds, the county recorder, the county sheriff, things like that, just to make sure that they fit into that budget scope. Every elected that doesn't get elected about setting or setting property tax rate, believe me, every dollar coming in should go to their department. Well, you spread that over 40 departments. Under 6 different electeds downstairs, assessor, recorder, sheriff, county attorney. Everybody wants that piece of that pie. So it's up to us to kind of keep the government right-sized, and also hopefully, and even according to Steve, keeping your property tax rate low, because that's what makes the economy gen, is not you guys paying more and more into taxes. It is spending tax money correctly, that we can keep a government running efficiently and keeping the money in your pocket. So that's what we're all, and we might be 4 Republicans and a Democrat, but that's our central focus is fiscal responsibility for the county. especially in a growing county, which is awfully tough because there's people coming in here every day wanting services the first time they purchase their house. Then they're hitting the recorder, the title companies, everything else that flows through the county.
So with that, you've already sort of both described the territory of your districts and its borders. But can you also, let's start with you, Supervisor Gallardo. What are 3 of the biggest assets and 3 of the biggest challenges in your district, and what's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years of your?
Asset, it's a very diverse district. I mean, and mainly because kind of the size too. I think you have a lot of potential in terms of growth. Particularly, I mean, I do have kind of the central metropolitan Phoenix area, but that's probably maybe a third. The other 2/3 are out here in the West Valley, and the potential out here in terms of growth and economic development. I mean, even you have everyone for the most part now looking at the West Valley and how we grow and how we grow responsibly. So I think from that, I do see that as a huge asset. Challenges, again, it's a growing economy. You have you still have a workforce development type issue that we have to address. You have some folks that are out of work. So how do we get them back in the workforce? You have a changing economy too. So how do we get them back in the workforce? Housing is huge in my district in terms of affordable housing. How do we make sure folks are able to get into they're able to get their family into 4 walls and a roof? They want to be in a home. So how do we get that into? When the housing market crashed, what was it, 10 years? It seems like it was just recently. When it crashed, it devastated not only the entire state and country, but it really devastated my district. Even around where I live, I can just walk around the neighborhood. I remember when I was in the legislature at the time, and I was talking to one of the reporters at the time. I said, you come with me, walk down my street, and you can see almost every other home was foreclosed, it was for sale, and these were homes where families once lived and now are empty. So it was a huge devastation, but I think we're still recovering from that. We really are. I think you have families that are still struggling to get their feet underneath them, to be able to get into a home. You know, a lot of folks are living in multi-purpose housing type apartment complexes. They want to get into housing. So how do we ensure that there are homes there that people can afford? And I think that's a responsibility not only as a supervisor, but from a legislative standpoint or a city council standpoint. It's something we all have to keep in mind. I mean, especially you look in downtown Phoenix, which was one point very, very affordable to many families. It's a lot of these places are now very expensive. So I think that's one of the challenges we face in my district.
And Supervisor Hickman?
Well, I'm trying to think of some assets in my district that you guys would identify with as either job creators or tax revenue producers. So in my district, I have the APS Palo Verde Nuclear Station, which is actually the largest taxpayer into the county revenue system. So protection of that and their workers is important to me. Luke Air Force Base, right dead center in my district.
Huge.
Quite the revenue generator. Our military, plus you have military families coming in from around the country, and the protection or the enhancement in quality of life for those airmen while they're here, and hopefully enticing them to become residents long term. You have in my district a fabulous Maricopa County park system, with the jewel being Lake Pleasant, and how to best protect that, and again, a quality of life issue. So that's one thing. The people are fantastic, mostly because I can walk in a room and somehow I know somebody in there because of my longtime family presence here, both in the elementary school district and elsewhere. So fabulous, because those people know they can just call me on the phone, or they can call a friend of mine who will then call me and harass me to make sure that I call that person back, their friend. So that's a great part. I think the tough thing that we probably are looking at, and Steve touched on it, is where are we gonna and how are we gonna put in infrastructure to support a growing population with a very, with a small revenue base. The East Valley is built out. They are swallowed up. I think District 3 only has 60,000 unincorporated area left in it because Scottsdale, Phoenix, and other communities have swallowed that all up. So it's a little bit easier when you're being a supervisor, I think, out there, because the cities are taking care of all those services. It becomes under their jurisdiction. So it's hard. That's why Steve and I work together, because I've got the most. Steve is following in short order with about 600 or 590,000 unincorporated. How are we going to work together to make sure the West Valley gets the proper piece of pie to build the bridges, the roads, the sewer system, everything that we have to put in before communities can sprout up? Another central focus that we have, planning and zoning. Planning and zoning in Maricopa County. What kind of houses are we going to let be built in unincorporated areas? For several years, cities would take swaths of land, incorporate them, and they would work with putting houses up. Right now, the cities have been reticent a little bit about expanding their borders as they're doing infill, but you still have developers that are looking for raw pieces of land and putting somewhere to put up 300 to 500 houses. That's an issue for me, and I think I've touched on it before. Our sheriff department, they are known for jails and maintaining the jails, and they're not known for their patrol function. And I'm a little bit worried, as we have far-flung communities, that our sheriff's office is going to be able to cover it. What they'll do is they'll come back and say, we need more money to cover it, right? So I have to kind of give a warning to developers every time they walk in and want to talk about a new piece of property in an unincorporated area. Realtors probably love it. Hey, more homes to sell. But the problem is more people, more problems, the way I view it, especially when you stack high population densities in unincorporated areas. It's not just the patrol of law enforcement. You also have fire service. So that's a concern. Getting houses closer and closer together. Rural metro is not known for their way of keeping neighborhoods safe. They're there just to kind of, try to put out fires and brush fires, but they're a long way away from some of these communities. So it's difficult, and that's what I have my eye on.
Real quickly, two other things just to throw it out there. Transportation, huge. How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to? As our county continues to grow and population continues, and people are moving to Maricopa County. They love our weather. They love what we have here. So how do we deal with that in terms of transportation? How we pay for it? And also another issue that is no longer just a downtown issue, the issue of homelessness. You see a number of individuals, not only just in downtown Phoenix, it's all over in my particular district, from the east portion of my district to the far west portion. I know even Canastic and sure Hickman's district as well, the issue of homelessness needs to be addressed.
So well, since you brought up the homelessness, we're going to switch. We're going to ask that question real quick. So you have the issue of the decision that came out of the Ninth Circuit earlier this year, and that really questions the sovereignty of the local entities and their ability to manage that issue and take care of that issue in a way that works for them, both budget-wise and for their actual
Does everybody know what that decision is? You don't follow it, but basically, the Supreme Court is looking at individual vagrancy laws. You can't just arrest someone just for hanging out, and that's what communities were doing to get them shuffled out of their community. And basically, the Supreme Court said that's against their rights.
So when we talk about, well, it's the Ninth Circuit's decision I was looking at most closely. So that was the one that was saying that if you had, in the end, it came down to if you can cite the person who's homeless on the street, and take them to jail, whatever it is you do as an entity, if the homeless shelters are full to capacity. My problem with that decision when I was reading it and reading through it and even reading the opinions, both sides of it, was the acknowledgement that it was based on Boise, Idaho, that the Boise, Idaho example was not conforming with what the decision was, which was you can't do anything about this as an entity, but in the Boise decision, it was acknowledged that the homeless shelters were not empty. These were people who had decided they just didn't want to go. There was space, but yet, so the city had cited them, and now the Ninth Circuit was coming back and saying, you can't even do that.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
so now the question is, that sort of imperils your ability to even be able to provide, look, there's a provision, but if you don't go to what we provided, then we're going to do something else. That sort of questions your ability to even manage this, to your point, to be able to manage that and manage it well. How are you thinking about that? What are your concerns about the decision? It's probably going to get to the Supreme Court because I'm sure that's going to go up. But in the meantime, you guys have to deal with this in the real world.
And this is something that is near and dear to my heart. And probably more so now that I'm on the county board than ever before. You know, it's interesting. I served 12 years in the legislature, and when I got to the county board, this was the one issue that was in front of us. And I sat there and I thought, I said, man, I was in the legislature for 12 years, and with all the different pieces of legislation that's introduced, I mean, slew of it, I don't remember one piece of legislation, and shame on me as well, ever being introduced to even talk or address the issue of homelessness. It's never been an issue down there. Out of all the issues we deal with at the Capitol, I mean, there's like what, 3,000 bills that are introduced and every year, and like not one dealing with homelessness. I think this is probably the most complex issue I've ever dealt with. How do you address individuals, human beings, who have a variety of issues, and how do you address their needs? How do you address, it goes back to the quality of life in our neighborhoods as well. How do we address this particular issue? And this isn't something that Maricopa County can do alone. This isn't something that a municipality somewhere can do alone. This is, you know, it goes back to the old saying, it takes a village. It's going to take a village in order to address this issue. It's going to take the state, the county, the city. It's going to take the private sector, the faith community. It's going to take everyone coming together and say, how do we address the issue of homelessness? Anything from mental health issues, from substance abuse, from people that are just down on their luck, that just need some help. People that may need a new training in terms of getting into a new workforce. I mean, it's a variety of issues. One of the toughest things, that cash shelter we have in downtown Phoenix, what do they see, like 10,000 people a year? And that is just in the downtown area. That's not taking consideration everyone that's in North Phoenix, West Phoenix, in Mesa, Tempe. I mean, there is a variety. You have families that are living in cars. How do we address that? How do we, and it's complex. And do I think just throwing money at it? No, of course not. That doesn't address the issue of homelessness. Just citing them or arresting them, that doesn't address it. That doesn't go to the root cause of the issue. I went out to LA because they just passed this huge bond to try to address the issue of homelessness. I was like, I want to see what they're doing. So I went out there for a couple of days just to kind of tour, see what they're doing. But I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Not only from the State House, but down to the county board. It has to have every component. You have a lot of great providers out there, nonprofits doing great things. St. Vincent de Paul, you have United Way, you have all these organizations that are doing great things. But there has to be, and I wish I had that silver bullet to say, this is what we need to do. You have different opinions out there as well, but this is something that is going to take everyone coming together to the table to address the root cause. How do we help people? You have a number of people. You have some people, believe it or not, and I hate to say this out publicly, you have some people that just like the lifestyle for whatever reason. They just like it. But you have some folks that are just down on their luck. They may be homeless for 2 or 3 months, but you get them back on their feet and they get back in the workforce and they finally, they're able to get involved in mainstream America. But it's a tough issue because there's so many different elements that cause the issue of homelessness. Do I believe cities should have the ability to address the needs themselves? You bet, I do. But do I think that is going to attack the root cause? No, it's going to take everyone coming together.
So do you see that perhaps the county could, since the county sits, sort of if you think about it, between the cities and the state, and they have they incorporate a large amount of land, and they see all of the different types of homelessness as you've just described, and they are in touch with all the different types of organizations, private and public funded. Do you think the county is in a position to perhaps be the coordinator of those types of services with a vision towards how can we eventually have a conduit to solve the problem? And then as a sidebar, there are people who like the lifestyle, but that's not conducive to the greater society. That may be a breakout within itself. Is that a place that the county might have?
Oh, definitely. And we have. We have. I think we have a nice team there, Bruce and his core group of folks that are very passionate working with all the different providers. You know, the cash shelter, you have, 20 or so nonprofit providers there that are there to address the needs of folks. Some of it is just, as simple as just having a driver's license so they can go out and apply for a job. Sometimes it's just, again, getting someone into workforce development, training them in a new area of workforce. There's a lot we can do, but however, we can be kind of the leaders of it, but everyone has to take their part. I can tell you, just in my area, I have cities that will tell, I have council members and mayors, and I love them all, that will tell me, Steve, it's not our issue. Oh, yes, it is your issue. It is. It's everybody's responsibility. And yes, the bulk of them, bulk of our homeless individuals are in Phoenix, because that's where a lot of the nonprofits and programs are. But you're having individuals pop up everyone. I was out in Gila Bend talking to the council folks out there, and they have individuals that are homeless out there, and it's a small community. So I think, yes, can we be the leaders and those that kind of bring everyone together? Yes, and we have been doing that.
Well, and my point on that is when you're in a government and you try to show leadership and you spend your taxpayer dollars in that, you find out you take ownership of the problem, and it just runs to you. Does the county need to be a leader and take ownership? I say no. Can we be helpful? I say yes. Because quite often, as Steve said, I have mayors 1 week after another, hey, we got to do something about this homelessness. I go, yeah, we or you? Well, you guys have that homeless center you opened up. Great. I'm glad there's a magnet for that, but it shouldn't just be the interior city of Phoenix problem. It shouldn't be. It needs to be from the state on down. The governor needs to take an interest. He has the people to do it. We all share in that as state taxpayers. So if we really want to throw it all together, we need to have some leadership. We are a subdivision of state government. Tucson has the problem. It's everywhere. Apache County has the problem. So we all need to come together and figure this out. The other thing that you notice is, yeah, Steve went to LA to visit it. We think our situation is bad.
That's worse.
Have you been to see a LA Dodger game and see people living underneath? A core problem is mental health and drug addiction. Mm-hmm. And how is the county supposed to do something with that with our limited spend on public health? So we all need to come together with that. I think the charities do a great job. CAST does a great job. We need to embolden the Phoenix rescue missions of the world and stuff, not just be the central focus of the guys trying to put homeless somewhere. And I will say there is a lot of people. You can discount it all you want, but there is a lot of people that, hey, this life is okay with me.
Yeah.
And that is a generational issue, and that we all need to fix. It's not okay to just sit around and live in a tent off in a back alley. It's not. So that's not the American dream. We need to get these people focused on the American dream of owning their own property, taking care of their own stuff, and personal responsibility.
Great. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back to more questions, and we'll start out with the election issue questions in our next one. So
Yeah, that's
5 minutes.
Steve's question. That's Steve's.
5 minutes.
5
So we're going to start back up with the election issues. If you followed what was going on, or maybe you experienced it in August, the August primaries, I know in my area we had the delay of the polling places opening to the point that our mayor even tweeted out at one point, just go to Avondale City Hall. It's a vote center. Go there and you can get in and vote, because some of our polling places were so late in opening. With that, the county did a report and released it, a couple weeks ago on what was going on, and the county recorder has a plan for November that hopefully means that that won't happen again. So it's a combination of contractors and the county recorder and some misunderstandings apparently, but they have a plan so that that doesn't happen in November, which is going to have even more voters than in August, which was quite a few for what it was, a primary and a off presidential election year. So from that, are you confident in the plan? Are you happy with the plan? Do you foresee any issues going forward? Long-term, is this a temporary, just get us through November plan, or do we have a long-term plan to make sure that we don't have these same issues happen again?
So you're looking at me, and what I really like to do here on a situation like this is all of our 5 board members kind of represent different things. Like Steve Chukri is the president of the Restaurant Association. So we look to his guidance. Denny Barney is a developer, and Steve Chukri is a 4th generation Arizonan. Denny Barney's a 6th generation Arizonan.
Wow.
Bill Gates, I don't know, I think he's 2 or 3.
I'm not too sure.
He's a lawyer. Bill Gates is a lawyer, works as lead counsel for the Ping Corporation, so manufacturing. I'm a lowly egg farmer that understands rural issues. But people don't know this about Steve Gallardo, and I have to point it out. Steve worked in the Maricopa County Elections Department for how many years, Steve?
14 years.
Wow.
14 years.
Wow.
So he's our elections authority. So I'm very interested to see if Steve feels that if he has a great
I was
plan.
hoping I'd get the answers from you all here. Oh, man. So let me just say this. In all fairness to our hardworking election staff people who do an incredible job, and I'll just say this bluntly, there's no such thing of a perfect election, period. It's never happened in this entire country, and I don't foresee it happening in the future. You're always going to have mistakes. You're always going to have errors. When you're dealing with a county, particularly Maricopa County, this big and this many voters, you're going to see some problems. The question becomes, are you prepared to deal with the problems when they occur? And the one question that I always ask, even the previous county recorder and our current county recorder, it's what's our emergency plan? What is it? Now you try to think of worst case scenarios. What happens if X happens or whatever. But you have to have a plan. If something goes wrong, how do you address it? You should never stop the flow of voting. No one should ever go to a polling place and where the door is closed and we say, nope, we're not voting today. This is the most fundamental right we have as no one should ever show up at a polling place and it being closed or being told you have to go somewhere else. You never should have to stop the flow of voting. That was one of the big issues. Remember the Bush v. Gore? Remember the Florida thing, the hanging Chad and all that other stuff? Well, right after that election, Congress came together and they did what they called the Help America Vote Act, where they did a whole slew of stuff. One of the things they added was a provisional voting method, where they said no one should ever be turned away. If you go up to a poll and your name's not there, you're still voting. You vote a provisional ballot. And we will look at it later on and determine if you count it or not. We have a provision in statute that I believe needs to be taken out that says If you go to the wrong polling place, your vote automatically is disqualified. So you may go to, to this particular church, which is across on the other side, on the other side of Union Hills. When this is your polling place, your vote's not going to count. Even though your ballot may be identical, the same offices, your vote's still not going to count. I think that has to change. I really do. I think we got to err on the side of voters, and as long as they're eligible to vote on these particular offices, shouldn't matter where they vote. So I think that's where the vote centers, I guess you'd call them, play a key role, because you reduce that problem. Now, I think it's something that we got to really think about in how we roll this out, because it's relatively new. Our previous county recorder tried to do that, and she was right. It was just executed wrong, unfortunately. In terms of, we had the presidential primary, we had the 60 polling sites, and we had long lines. She had the right idea. It was just executed a little bit wrong. I think even the vote centers now that we have, I think it's a right step. I think we got to institute it slowly. I like the idea of polling sites on top of vote centers, where voters have the option. If you're working out in Mesa, but you live out here in the West Valley, and you have a vote center near your place of work or business, you should be able to walk, vote, and call it a day. You exercise your right. I like that method, and I think we need to continue to push that. I think there's a level of education. I think technology has changed everything we do, including the way we vote. So how do we institute that? How do we make sure, I believe, slowly integrate the new technology where we're keeping up with times? I believe eventually we're going to be voting from here. We will. Let's be real. This is coming. I don't know in what form or when, but it's going to happen.
Not with Google.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, good point. Good point. But so I think as we roll out elections, I think we need a plan, and we are currently working with our county recorder. I'm talking to him on a regular basis. I ask him the tough questions. We need to make sure that everyone has their right to vote. I mean, I think this is my measuring stick. If one person is disenfranchised, I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, independent, young person, retiree, I don't care who it is. If one person is disenfranchised, that's one too many. That's the level that we should be operating at. And there's no reason, as a board, we gave, I don't know how much money we gave.
$13 million.
$13 million to the county recorder. Gave him pretty much everything he needed. Now, how do we make sure that we have an election system, an election day, that is going, I understand we're going to have small problems. We need to be prepared to address those problems. If all of a sudden the polling place burns down the night before, we should already have a thought on how do we address those voters that are going to go to a polling place that's not going to be there. Or if a pipe busts into the restroom and it's now flooded, how do we address it? I can tell you in 2006, we had a similar situation where we got flooded out of a polling place. We took a large semi-truck to that polling site. We parked in the parking lot, put a tent. That was our polling place for the day. This is the way we got to think. The flow of voting should never stop. We should never have long lines. We should never have someone showing up to a polling site that is now closed because the internet access or the computer system wasn't set up. That's not a good, no, that's unconscionable. We need to make sure that every qualified person has the right to exercise what we know is our most fundamental right, our right to vote. So I hope I answered that question in that.
That's great. And so along with those provisional ballots, I know in the election that we all had to stand 5.5 hours in line. One of the things that really struck me in that election, and there was, I don't know how you address this, was the staggering number of people in my, and I was one of those people who stood in line for 5.5 hours. I get up to vote, to sign in line. And it was one of those things where for every person who was already registered and able to just go up, sign, show their ID, and go vote, there was a good 20 or 30 people in that line who were over at provisional, and they were saying things like, well, no, I didn't register. And
This was the presidential preference
Right.
election?
So they're having to vote provisional because so that part of a good chunk of the line I stood in for 5.5 hours was a good 4 hours of people who didn't have a clue in heaven what they were doing. I don't know how, education's important, and I know that the county recorder, they tweet, they Facebook, they have mailings, they try to get that word out. How else can we get the word out? You have to register to vote in order to go vote. Like, don't show up when you can't do that.
So, wonderful point, great point. On the presidential primary election where we had the 5-hour wait lines, even to my extent, we all underestimated the excitement around the election. They did calculations. What did we have in previous elections? Even when our own Senator John McCain was on the ballot, we didn't have this much excitement here in Arizona. Everyone underestimated the excitement. This is when we had President Trump was campaigning. You had, who else was on? I think
there was about
Marco Rubio.
There was about 4 left
Ted,
when we
yeah,
got
well,
it.
I mean, there was a high name individuals, and then on the other side you had the Hillarys, the Bernie. It was just the excitement, and that weekend, 4 or 5 days, the last 4 or 5 days prior to that election, every one of those candidates were in town having rallies. The media was covering it, and everyone underestimated the excitement and the number of people that were going to show up to vote. And a number of these folks, for the most part, were not really familiar with our election laws. In Arizona, in our presidential primary, it's a closed primary. Independents can't vote. So what happened? Independents showed up because they can normally vote in our general elections, in our primaries. They just indicate which ballot they want. They showed up on election day thinking they were going to be able to vote, and not in Arizona. It's a closed presidential primary election, which is another thing that I believe the legislature needs to address.
There's
Look at
Mr.
Mayor back
Gallen.
there. It's another thing. I think, we have to unify or uniform our election system. However they want to do it. They want to make it closed. They want to make it open. That's up to our legislators to decide. I have my own preference, but it's up to the legislators and our governor to decide. But you can't tell independents, well, you can vote in our primaries, but you can't vote in the presidential primaries. You can't vote. I don't think that's fair to independents, particularly when a third of our electorate right now are independents. So I think that needs to be addressed. So all these issues came into play, and then the fact that we reduced the number of polling sites in Arizona or in Maricopa County to 60, that was just a perfect storm, and that's what happened. But we learned from it. I think now we know, instead of having one line to check in, you have multiple lines to check in. I think now you know that you have a marshal. Your marshal should be going up and down that line if there is a line. There shouldn't be a line. But if there is a line, going up and down the line saying, how can I help you? Are you here just to drop off your early ballots? You don't have to wait in line. You go over here. And try to kind of weed out those folks that perhaps may not need to wait in line. These are the little things that we learned from that presidential primary that could be corrected. I love Helen. I worked with her for 14 years. She was my boss. They underestimated the excitement, and she paid dearly at the ballot box. She lost her office. But I think from that we learned, and I hope the county recorder, our current county recorder, and I think he is, he's listening to what you all as voters are telling him, what the political parties are telling him, and what we're instructing to him, because we hear it every day. In that presidential primary election, this what really irks me, and it comes from my side of the aisle.
Oh, God.
Okay,
Here
this
it
is what
comes.
irks me. I went around when this plan was thrown out there, because I understand elections. When this plan was thrown out there, I went to everybody on my side of the aisle. I said, this is the plan. What do you think? I have issues. What do you think? It was like crickets. No one said anything. But as soon as Election Day happened and we had the 5-hour, they were all experts. And I thought, where the hell were you 2 months ago when I was pointing this out? And it just drives me crazy. Unfortunately, I think we learned from it. I think we're making some changes. I think we need to be slow in terms of how we,
Stand up. Someone stand up and walk. Someone walk that aisle right there. Just walk out there.
See, these are the issues we got to address on election day, making sure the lights stay on. But I think we learned, and I think hopefully we're going to never allow what happened happen again. I know we're still trying to sort out what happened to the 60 polling places or so, 60 plus, happen in our primary. That should never be the case. Like I said, folks, there's never going to be a special election, a perfect election. You're going to have problems. The question is, are we prepared to address those problems?
Supervisor Hickman, did you?
Elections have consequences.
Yep.
It's that simple. And Helen, I enjoyed my time with Helen. And as I talked to people in my district, I said, hey, I'm huge at fault for this. They submitted a plan, and Karen Osborne, who was elections director, card-carrying Democrat at that time, came and presented a plan to our board. Now, I'm going to reset a little bit of what that time frame was like. They came and brought a plan, and they wanted to test out voting centers. And they wanted to pull that down. Why they want to pull it down? I said clearly, let's try to pull this election off as cheaply as possible. I'll still stand by those remarks for a number of reasons. At that time, the county pays for that election and is to be reimbursed by the state. But the state has the option of not paying for it. Okay? We were getting wind that the state was not going to reimburse the county for that as we were in the planning process. Mr. Gowan, there you are. We were hearing that. Our board was hearing that. We are business people. Sometimes you experiment. I mean, businesses do that too. And sometimes you go, oh, that was a mistake. It's very tough to do an election. But I'm going to continue to say it over time and time again. The presidential primary election is not an election. It is a beauty contest for federal candidates. The presidential primary now is so late in the season now for Arizona that it almost is just a chance for presidential primary candidates to come in and say the same things to their base. Okay? That's what was happening with Bernie Sanders and Hillary on one side, Donald Trump and the three that remained on that other side. That was going on. How many independents now? There's like a third of registered independents. This is a chance for our political parties to stand up and be fiscally responsible and say, we will pay for that. Other states' parties pay for presidential preference elections. Straw poll in Iowa, it's a chance for the parties to make money and to garner support for their candidates and to garner membership in their parties. So we're asking, the state, all of us are asking independents to pay taxpayers to pay for an election that they cannot participate in. I have a fiscal issue with that because they don't even get a chance to vote in it, but they're paying for it with no say in the matter. So think about that next time. And I talked to David, you're here. I think the parties should take that over, especially because it's so late in the season that it almost doesn't matter other than, again, prompting federal candidates, but the state taxpayer is paying for it. And it looked like the county taxpayer was going to pay for it. What I'm irritated about is the current recorder ran centrally on that and pasted the living hell out of a person and her staff. And he won the election, and he took it over. He's not made the kind of changes that he said he was going to make, right? We lived through it, and I'm sorry, you're saying irritated. I'm pissed off because in my district, 2 of them didn't get open till 11:30. I went to one of them and talked to the poll staff. Their morale is horrible. They were mad because people were yelling at them, and they're just volunteering to do their civic duty. And they're yelling and saying, I'm never coming back. I worry about the general. I do. we're participating in trying to get county employees to participate as poll workers. Pretend it's jury duty. Just go out there. We'll even pay you for it. So be aware, and yeah, keep letting us know and keep letting the recorder know. But we're trying to support the election staff that are trying to do a good job, as best job as they can. And I'm hoping it works out. You know, a plan, you can only tell if a plan works day of. And then, so I'm hoping that we have a decent report out of the external auditors that the county taxpayer paid for to see what went wrong, how could we do better, and hurry up and implement it next month.
Clint brings up a good point, and that's a question I think we all need to, as voters and as policymakers, we all need to be asking ourselves, what is the purpose of our presidential primary election? When it was first created back in, like, our first one, I think was in 98, I could be wrong, I think it was in 98, we were third in the nation in terms of presidential primaries. It was, you know, you had the Iowa, New Hampshire, and then boom, Phoenix, Arizona, or state of Arizona. We were the third, so the media attention was focused on us. We were the it. We were actually deciding who the nominees were going to be. We're no longer the third in the nation. I think it's South Carolina now. We're down, I don't even know where we're at, like somewhere in the 20s or so in the nation in terms of having our election. In the past, the political parties paid for them, not the state. The state of Arizona passed a law to create it, made it a state funded election where independents at the time were not as high as they are now. Now they're third of our electorate, but now they still aren't able to participate. So the question is, do we really need a presidential primary election that's costing us probably anywhere from $8 to $9 million statewide? Do we really need this? And if we do need it, if it's something that the voters or the people of Arizona want, shouldn't we let the independents participate? I mean, they're paying for it out of their tax dollars, but they're not able to participate. Is it a dog and pony show? For the most part, yes. There is no, you know, you can have a candidate win the Arizona presidential primary. Doesn't mean they're going to be the one that's going to be on the ballot in November. So those are questions I think as a state we need to address.
One more thing, in my district it was pretty sensitive to me because I worked awfully hard on this, so did my board, but awfully hard on the CD8 special election. I really thought that was the test for us when Trent Franks resigned and people ran in a primary and a general here to get that spot. So we worked really hard and it came off pretty flawlessly. And I told the recorder, I'm going to really thank you publicly in the public square if you pull this off. This is your first election and it's a compressed time period. So I was a little bit unprepared of the letdown on the big primary because I saw it happen very well and very effective on the CD8, both the primary and the general, on a much more compressed time frame. So, you know, crossing my fingers, hoping the best, and doing whatever we can do. Well, I think our board got our biggest vote when the recorder said the problems were not a dollar and cents issue. It was a people issue. Well, those people don't answer to us. They answer to the recorder. But the dollars and cents, that's our budgeting. So we gave them the technology, the time, and the money to do a good job, and he verified that he didn't need any more of that. He just needed to do a better job. So hopefully he's had a month and a half, 2 months to prepare to do a better job for the general for all of us.
Okay. And then one thing that I heard from several people, not just our members, but other people as I was out and about talking to different groups in the community, was people who had gone to that primary and they had walked in and you had the pads that you signed in on, but their concern was all their personal information was there for anybody to look over their shoulder. And then you still had, it didn't feel like it was going faster because you still had to have a person come over and verify you, as opposed to when we just walk up to a table, here's my ID, sign the thing, get your ballot, go vote. So is that system, was it just we're not used to it, so it took longer type of thing? The privacy issue really is a concern for people, is there any talk about how to make that more private? And then was it just a first-time illusion that it didn't go faster, or is there some mechanism?
The actual iPads is something relatively new, and I think that's a good point to bring up to the recorder's office, because nobody wants, in this day and age, you don't want your information out there. You don't. I mean, you hear all the horror stories on the identity theft or theft type stuff. So I think that's a good issue to bring up. I'll bring it up myself with the county recorder. I'm an early ballot voter. I don't go to the polls. As my parents do. I don't. I'm an early ballot voter, so I haven't experienced the actual vote pad, but that's a good issue to bring up. I mean, technology is constantly changing. Everything we do, even on your regular daily job as realtors, it changes. Voting's no different. Technology has changed. The vote centers is kind of a wave of the country. That's kind of like the trend around the entire country, is these vote center method. And it's still relatively new, so like anything else, you get problems. The questions are you prepared to address those problems? Are you, there's a lot of things, if I had my magic wand and then, if I was a county recorder, I would do a lot of things that I think you should be doing.
I think you should run for county recorder. Privacy screens were bought and paid for. Were they installed properly at every location? I certainly hope so. It's cardboard going around something. I certainly hope so. Line mechanics, kind of up to the recorder, and every polling place is different. A school gymnasium is different than a school, or different than a church that's different than a bowling alley. So all of that kind of thing. I think line mechanics are probably going to be based on if you've had a poll, if that's been a polling place before, and you have seasoned staff that know what they're doing, that we're working on, and poll workers that have been there before. I think I'll give them all the credit that they'll probably set that thing up to address all those concerns, because that's kind of up to them on day of.
Okay, great. So we have just a few more minutes. We have not even gotten through.
I told you I had homework, so.
So we're going to follow.
Rapid fire questions.
We're going to follow back up with both supervisors. Hopefully, I would just tell you right now, I'm going to invite you both to be on the WeMAR GAD podcast. Okay. And we will also follow up in other ways and get that information back out to you so you can get answers to the questions that we haven't had a chance to ask. But I want to touch on water just real quickly. If we can spend 5 minutes or so on water, it is such a big issue in our industry for property owners, for commercial and residential both. You can't build a plant or build a building or build a house if there's no water. It just is an empty thing. Mm-hmm. So when that comes to that whole livability, sustainability of water, just real quickly, I'm going to condense these into what you're dealing with at the county level as far as making sure there's adequate water, sustainable supplies of water, how you're working with the state organizations, the city organizations that you're involved with to make sure that the economic development we're seeing across the valley, but particularly in the West Valley, is something that can actually go forward. So, and then any kind of private well type of issues that you might be thinking are important for us to know about. So who'd like to lead off on that, baby?
I took elections. You take water.
Okay, I'll take. Being that I'm from the farming community and chickens drink water, I will say, because I think I kind of heard these questions answered as they should be more from the state legislative people that were here a month ago and talking about water. Yeah. The county has authority, very little on water. That's mostly statutory authority from the legislature on to the cities or unincorporated areas. But for the most part, the developers identify the piece of property, make sure they have a 100-year water supply based on the statute, all that. That's not something that we're going to really get in there and change. We can advocate rule changes, or we can advocate for new legislation, but that's kind of up to you guys talking to your state legislator. I try to keep an ear towards it. There's a ton of farming community in my district, but then again, I'm working with what the legislators would like me to know and how I can be helpful as a voice that uses water. much more than a county supervisor that dictates how we let developers use it. I'm not aware of too many issues on wells. I know that's really happening in District 3 and a little bit in District 2, where people are on these basically homesteads or on their acre that they're obligated to have their own well or acres, and they're running into problems and having to go deeper and deeper, and the neighbors are taking my water, and I think they make movies about that. But I haven't seen much of residents really asking me to be involved in an issue like that yet. I know that the legislators, I know that the feds, everyone else is looking at water policy, the issue about the level dipping at Fort Meade, and we're getting to a level that's really going to affect it. The main people it's going to affect first is the Pinal County farmers. And I know they're very engaged in it. So I just don't know what I can do much unless there's a specific question what lies to the authority of a county supervisor I can answer. Just be helpful as much as we can as decisions are made.
One of the things that we've gotten from a couple of our members, and we have a water issues task force, for members who sell property, and what you're describing of people going out, and this is particularly happening with smaller investors are going out and buying a chunk of land, like maybe 2 acres or something like that, divide it into 4, so there's no subdivision the disclosure.
Yeah,
required.
lot splitting is just not my favorite topic.
And
It's
the
just
problem is,
not.
they're not disclosing what the water is, what the sourcing is, what is sustainable. So the question is, and Pinal experienced this big time about, 3 years ago. They had some real problems with this type of thing. And in the housing sector, that's a problem when someone buys a house and finds out later on they don't actually have access to water they thought they had. So for those realtors, it's a very big concern for their clients. Is there something the county can do to help so that there's a way of a disclosure mechanism that the county can say, hey, if you're going to be lot splitting, we need you to disclose what the source, what the sustainability, what the priority of your water rights are for residential.
Again,
Yeah.
that is water policy that's probably not going to go in
Okay.
the bailiwick of the rulemaking capabilities of a county supervisor. What that's going to do, because you're talking about significant amount of people that have to have even-handed regulation. David, you probably should call you up on this because you're probably dealing with it in Cochise County, but
Yeah.
we're probably going to continue to look, if you have that issue, a specific question on how it's affecting you. Here's Michelle, get it to me so I can work on it with the correct people, is all I can say on an
Great.
issue that's so analogous as that.
Great.
It is probably another very complex question that takes everyone's input. Our own, former, now current, U.S. and John Kyle has been really a champion on the issue of water, especially advocating for the state of Arizona. I know the feds have done a lot of research and studies, and they've had a great discussion. But it's not just on the federal level that we need to have this discussion. We do need to have it, of course, at the state level. My personal opinion, a greater discussion on the state level as well. And it has to include local governments as well. It has to include the city councils, especially when you talk about the developments and how that works forward. It's a complex issue, but it's an important issue. It's a discussion that we can't just pretend doesn't exist. Long-term wise, you've got to have this discussion now. We have to come up with a solution and how we are going to advance over the next, how many years and how we deal with water. It's huge.
Right.
And also on the county level, David would probably say, I was former president of County Supervisors Association, and even every county's different. They're hauling water in Mojave County and La Paz County, and it's we just kind of have to roll towards what every other county's looking at it too. It's a statewide.
And you have
thing.
tribal governments too.
Tribal governments
Tribal
too that
governments
weigh
is
in.
huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay. So with that, we have just a couple more minutes. I will tell you right now, the county website, as you can tell, the county does a lot more than most of us realize. The county website is a font of information. You could get lost in that, so take a little time.
Could fall asleep to it too, depending if you're.
Go through that county website and learn all the different services and responsibilities that the county has. It'll really open your eyes, and when you go to vote particularly, you'll find out. If you go to wemargad.org, there is an article on there about what you need to know in order to vote in the November election. So if you want to check your registration status, we have a direct link into the Maricopa county recorder, so you can go, and he has a button there to check. If you've lost your pamphlet, he has a place there for you to download it so you can see it. At Secretary of State's website, we have a link to that. If you're in Cochise County, we have a link to that county recorder as well. So check that article if you are unsure about the requirements to vote or what's on your ballot. You can find all that out through those links. I also want to ask you guys one more question, which is in your counties, if we have a new client, either commercial or residential, agricultural, whatever it may be, who is moving to your district, what would you like us to particularly point out about your district? What would you like us to say? Supervisor Gallardo, you want to try that?
First of all, let me just say that I think it's critical for, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, it's critical to inform your clients exactly what the county offers. And I don't know if you guys give out informational guides or whatever, but I think that's critical. You ask most folks, like, what does the county do? They'll tell you, for the most part, they'll give you an answer. Well, that's where you go vote or go to jail. That's what they'll tell you. And okay, yeah, but we do a hell of a lot more here. So I would really encourage you all to really, offer some of your let it be particularly a residential type. These are the county services. This is where you go for, especially if they're in a county island. This is where you go for particular information, because most folks would call their mayor and council person before they call Clint or I. It's just an automatic assumption. They go to the city. In terms of my jurisdiction or my area, I am most proud of, and I give kudos to, because they're a big part of what I believe, are our parks. We have great parks. Let it be a county park or even our municipal parks. Point those out. We have some beautiful parks here in our valley. Some are municipally, most of them are done municipal, but we have some county parks as well. Point those out. Everyone's looking for a place, especially our young ones, our kids. They're looking for a place to throw a ball. They're looking for a place to run. Families are looking for a place to just go and relax. And I think our neighborhood parks, and that's something to really point out. I live on these parks. I do a lot with young folks. And I really enjoy the parks we have, not just in Phoenix, but even in Avondale and Goodyear. We just have some great areas in which families can really, enjoy. And I'd point those out. I'm proud of our parks.
I would say, just because I've grown up here in the West Valley, I've been able to watch it grow. And I would tell companies, you are walking into the ability to walk into a area that has a great workforce. We need more training for workforce. We need more manufacturing out here, because I think if manufactured-based companies get here, especially in this time, it will grow this area in the best way possible. Better houses, because people can afford better houses. Roads, because they're paying into a tax base. I would love to see a manufacturing base growing out here to the point where we can keep traffic from leaving this area, going and using our freeways, and going to where the jobs are, which are in Center Phoenix or even as far as Mesa. We have one time to do this right. There is so much still flat land, beautiful land, and mountains around here. We can be the jewel of this valley if we all work together. Get the next generation that's under you guys involved in government, involved in policy making, involved in leadership, and involved in the trades. There are jobs out here that are coming. You want your kid to have a nice house, and you want your kid to live close to you. The only way you can do that is continuing to elect policymakers or elect doers and not sayers. The great thing about this county job, I mess around with Steve all the time, but we pretty much act kind of bipartisan. This toxic atmosphere that goes on that you get to watch on TV of people screaming at each other, we don't. We sit there and go, there's very few voices in the West Valley in leadership, so I got to make sure that he and I are working together to help these communities. And if he catches something in his district that I can be helpful on, he calls me, and vice versa. We answer our phones. We try to do a good job. And I would love to see beautiful homes being built with families that are going to stay here and live here for generations like I was able to do.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for coming. We've so enjoyed this
Were we boring?
conversation.
Were we boring? Those legislators? Sorry, David. Last month.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.